Welcome back. This week, Johannesburg Mayor Dada Morero assured residents that despite recent challenges, their taps will not run dry this Christmas. However, after days of outages following critical maintenance and a year full of bursts and leaks, residents are not entirely convinced. On top of that, several councillors in the metro have claimed that the water management authorities were not adequately prepared to deal with the challenge of recent outages. For more on this, we are now joined by the WaterCAN's Dr. Ferrial Adam. Doc, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. Now, the Mayor has stated that no water shortages are expected this festive season. Based on your expertise, how realistic is this assessment given the rate of return post the plant maintenance and that 86-hour shutdown?
Good evening to you and to your viewers. I think that most of the areas seem to be having water. There may be some hiccups, and that might be separate issues in terms of fixing or leaks, etc. So I think that most parts seem to be having water by now. Right.
So how prepared is the city to meet the increased water demand typically seen during the festive season?
You know, I think it's a difficult one because if we look at the fact that our infrastructure is really old and we have half of our reservoirs are leaking, it is always a challenge. And until that gets dealt with, we will always have the kind of issues that we've been having over the last 2 years with intermittent supply, or if we have very hot weather, reservoirs running dry because we don't have storage. So I think that, you know, we're hopeful that things would be fine around Christmas and, you know, possibly New Year. But I do think that this is the kind of thing we will have continuously until we get our infrastructure fixed, and that's going to take a number of years.
Do we have an infrastructure problem or a maintenance problem?
We have both. Because of the lack of maintenance over 10 years, or the required amount of budget being spent on maintenance, we now are dealing with infrastructure that is old or breaking or whatever. And so you can't do plaster operations. You need to do, you know, full-on surgery, so to speak. And so until we do that, we are going to have a challenge. The fact that, you know, like I said, in Johannesburg, we have half of our reservoirs are leaking. But I need to say that if we're looking at water nationally, you know, it's still quite worrying and concerning that across the country, in many municipalities, people cannot drink the water from their taps because it's not of the quality that's acceptable for consuming.
I mean, we heard earlier on one of the councillors in the city of Johannesburg speaking about some of the challenges that they experienced during this water outage, some things that they themselves were not expecting, that they were also hijacked and mugged while trying to deliver water trucks. Where do you see the problem fundamentally sitting in terms of the issues within management with regards to supplying this basic good?
You know, I think the first problem is that the reliance on water tanks and JoJo tanks. We knew that with this maintenance, almost 60% of Joburgers were going to be without water. So there was no way that the Joburg Water or the city could manage actually providing water. What needed to happen, and I think in future they need to think about, is working much better and much more engaging with civil society and other groups that can actually assist with that can assist the philanthropic organizations that can assist with getting water out to people. And I say that because we must avoid every time that there's a water outage, we just say, let's have water tanks and JoJo tanks, because we know that when we open that door, we are dealing with a mafia that's going to be damaging. So let's look at how do we work. I mean, the people who were, you know, spotting water tanks, who were assisting, you know, old age homes, orphanages, were the community groups. And so they were the ones alerting Joburg. So there could be a better working relationship and engagement between government and the civil society groups on the ground. We saw that happening during COVID, and we saw that happening again now. Government needs to realize that when it comes to those kind of big operations, they can't do it alone.
Do you think some of the systematic issues within government are the ones that really just hold us back in terms of those kind of collaborations with civil society groups and government coming together in being able to deliver on such?
I think it's that, as well as the fact that there's a lack of trust on both sides, because they worry that they're going to be exposed. And then, of course, civil society feels that, or people in general don't trust anything that government or local government tells them at this point, which is difficult. And so we need to find that middle ground.
How effectively do you believe is the city communicating, especially with residents, about maintenance activities and any potential impacts on water supply?
So to be honest, I think that it's in a year, they've improved tremendously. Because when we started out, they would issue out, statements that made no sense and we couldn't figure it out. But they've learned to adjust. And they keep learning. They're not perfect yet. It still needs some work. So, for example, if you're going to tell me there's going to be an outage in a particular area, what is the fault? They don't give you the alternatives, what we need to do. They can't also, be specific in terms of timing, how long, all of it. And that's understandable because they're dealing with engineering issues. So I think it's improved. It's not the best. The one concern is, and we do know this, is that Joburg Water has recently said that they're no longer releasing the reservoir levels because people are confusing it and not understanding what they're saying. And I think that that's not fair, because civil society is not, we're made up of a whole range of people, and people have taught themselves to understand the reservoir levels, to understand what is going on. So I think they undermine people when they say that, and they make people more angry.
So in your opinion, what would then be those long-term strategies that the city should adopt in ensuring sustainable water management, especially during high demand periods like the festive season?
So I think that we need to get our infrastructure fixed. We need to deal with the leaks. We need to deal with our reservoirs that are leaking, because if you have working infrastructure, you have a storage of water, so that when you do maintenance, it doesn't affect vast numbers of people. And that is exactly what the Ekenhof kind of upgrade was all about. It was about being able to isolate particular flow so that other parts of the system can continue to operate and water can be still sent to the municipalities. So that's a good thing. But at a municipal level, we really need for an increase in the budget to Joburg Water so that they can start fixing the leaks and fixing the reservoirs as soon as possible. Because without that, you can try to have as much emergency kind of things on track and communicate with people, but there's no way that you can get water to people with just water tanks, etc. We also think that there has to be better engagement with civil society groups on the ground. They can help and they can be your eyes and ears. Already people are being very good at monitoring and reporting leaks. It's like people are becoming quite good at that. And that is what's allowing Joburg Water and the city of Joburg to reduce their leaks.
You spoke of a mistrust between civil society and government a little earlier on. What impact has civil society had within our communities, especially when it comes to water supply?
So there's a few things. We've been able to unpack the technical information. We've been able to get, for example, we had a site visit both to the Ekenhof pump station when they were doing the construction, as well as to the Hurst Hill 1 and 2 reservoirs, to get an understanding of what's going on. And we shared that information with people in a kind of a way that people could understand what is going on. The second thing that was done was being able to pinpoint the vulnerable homes and the vulnerable areas that people need water, to alert councillors when areas were told that they were going to get tanks but didn't get water tanks. It was a very big communication going on between councillors and residents and Joburg Water and residents. And I think that was really, it showed how we can work together if we need to, and that it actually makes sense to do that in the future.
Lastly, Doc, what policy changes would you then recommend, especially to local government officials, in order to enhance that resilience of the city's water supply?
So I think the first thing we're asking for is to ring fence money for infrastructure. And we've got a petition that we've sent out. We are asking, I know it's Christmas, people are, on leave, but we're asking people to sign the petition because we want to table it at council to say that they have to increase the budget for water and sanitation. It's key. It affects everything else that's happening in Johannesburg or in the city. So I think that's our starting point. As we move forward, we're saying, have engagements with people, with civil society. Let us understand what's going on so that we can build a trust moving forward. And I think there's such concern that when they hold back and don't share information, people become very suspicious of their motives. So when they do come with things like level 1 restrictions, we need to save water. There's so many people I've seen on groups saying, why must I save when they're not saving water themselves and they're not dealing with water leaks, which is not exactly true. But I think that's the kind of thing that we are going to have to deal with.
Most certainly. Doc, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your insights with us. That's Dr. Ferrial Adam from WaterCAN speaking to us from the civil society perspective with regards to water issues in Johannesburg and South Africa at large.